Well, start I shall. I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone had a great holiday season. You spent some time with friends, family, and loved ones of all sorts. And I hope you guys ate a ton of delicious food. There were probably some enzymes on the table, or if you're like me, you're the person who's got like all the pills in your pocket and you very sneakily kind of take one out as someone's talking and no one's looking at you and you pop one, or you want to use them as a conversation starter. But the new year is upon us, and I don't know if anyone else had the same sensation of 2025 being the fastest year of life. And when the calendar ticks over, we start an entirely new year of themes. And today is a first for me, I think, at least on a media-based education webinar, because we have a special little treat for everyone today. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. We are going to start the first webinar of 2026 with the short title of Resetting the Gut, Supporting Digestive Health and Function. So, my little preamble, I made mention, and I think we all need to be honest. This is likely what we all had to do in very short order with Thanksgiving and Christmas being so close back to back. I think there's three elements of us, of our individual selves, that are super excited about the smorgasbord of food availability. The first is our brains who love delicious flavors. The second, our inner child who still thinks that they can eat absolutely anything and everything without consequence or needing to feel bad afterwards. And number three is the different little critters and microorganisms that live in our guts that are being told that the buffet table is now open. So, in my article that I recently wrote for the month, I did make mention of I have a belief that even though a lot of these foods are not healthy, we get so focused on trying to be healthy and optimal all the time that sometimes there's a little bit of a fault in the mindset of optimal, meaning we can't make a mistake. I do believe that even though baked goods, desserts, massive glucose and insulin spikes are not necessarily good for your physiology, when done all the time, eating delicious food with loved ones and enjoying time and company and sharing in that special magic that the holiday season, whatever it is you celebrate, brings is incredible. Now, that being said, I don't even know if New Year's resolutions are things. I think they're under the category of an old saying that I abide by that short-term motivation leads to failure. I do believe in setting intentions and changing approaches and having accountability for self. So if that is something that you indulged in, and you did notice that the pants fit a little bit differently, the GI system started doing some things it hasn't done in a while, you might be someone who's in need of a gut reset, or your clients might be wanting a gut reset because the average person comes out of the holidays typically feeling a little heavier, slower, and more lethargic than they went into it, likely also because they were able to finally relax, rest, and let their physiology show them how tired they are. So a gut reset is many things. First and foremost, directly, it is something to help improve your gut health, rebalance or improve the resilience of your microbiome, to enhance that interface between digestion, absorption, and nutrition utilization. And what most people are really wanting is they're wanting some sort of weight loss kickstart. And I don't believe in the idea of crash dieting or extreme measures when it comes to changing one's body composition because there's always a collateral damage that takes a toll on the health. But if you abide by the saying that I put forth oftentimes, when you improve the gut, everything seems to work better. With better gut health, with a healthier microbiome, with more robust digestion, you have less water retention. The number on the scale may go down. You have less bloating and abdominal distension. You will see things fitting more optimally. So, a gut reset, although is focused on the gut, it is not just for the direct benefit of the digestive system alone. There are a lot of peripheral benefits in terms of how your physiology will look, how it will feel, and how it will perform, because the gut is still the outside of the tissue, relatively speaking, compared to the organs, circulatory system, lymphatic system. So it is a way to make sure that nutrition is coming in and the body is able to evacuate waste on a regular basis. And I think that doing reps as a health professional is an important thing because If anyone here runs a full-time practice, you'll know how hard it is to be on top of research, the latest news and trends, and you probably default to your reps, your health professional colleagues, and many times to help answer things that you don't know. So, as much as I can, I'm going to review the fundamentals because nailing these things in terms of understanding. So, not only do you know what decisions to make when someone's presenting a problem and you've done your diagnostics, you've done your symptom analysis, you can educate them in a way that's so simple that they can take that information on for themselves as powerful knowledge and be more invested in the process of facilitating change. So, this is my simplified workflow. Digestion, microbiome elimination is kind of a one-way relationship because it does run from north to south. What happens during the digestive process is we are supposed to break food molecules down from big to small and absorb those into the body. What we do eat will affect our microbiome, as will the status of our digestive health and our digestive prowess. Meaning, if you're not breaking food down optimally and absorbing it, you're essentially throwing fertilizer on the field of your microbiome, which might not be the best thing if that food is not properly broken down. The microbiome will affect elimination for a multitude of reasons. Elimination is making sure that waste materials and molecules that the body has detoxified, chelated, and released from the bowel into the stool are getting out of your system. If your microbiome is compromised, your elimination will be compromised in two ways. First and foremost, the reduction of bowel transit time and evacuation consistency will keep stuff in your system longer than it needs to be. And we have to remember the bowel is highly vascularized, so things can get reabsorbed back into circulation, into physiology quite quickly. The other aspect is a dysbiotic microbiome is a toxic microbiome, and they will be creating all kinds of toxic waste materials because it may sound a little crude and crass, but all microorganisms, yeast, fungi, archaea, parasites, they all excrete waste materials themselves. They poo and they pee, and those things can be highly irritating to people, especially if someone has an active infection. So, what and how you digest influences the terrain of your microbiome. As I just mentioned, the activity of the microbiome does influence the body's ability to regulate the immune function within the body and to regulate the elimination of everything in your system. And if you're not eliminating on a regular basis, that's a body that's not healthy. I used to, in nutrition school, I was taught this technique where I would have people either eat beets for dinner or have them swallow some activated charcoal or a tablespoon of sesame seeds and tell me how long it takes for them to see evidence of that coming out the other end. And I remember one time having a client so constipated, she rushed herself to the hospital simply because she thought she was bleeding internally. She forgot that she'd eaten beets 4 days prior. So 4 day long constipation, and people wonder why they don't feel well when the average American transit time is somewhere between 24 and 72 hours, whereas it's likely supposed to be somewhere between 12 and 18. So we have to know these fundamental basics of this digestive process. And I thought this graphic was pretty cool. The environment inside of our digestive system is highly specific, and the process of digestion is highly coordinated. What that basically means is the internal environment is regulated by pH, so the acidity to alkalinity ratio, and the process of digestion is very much dependent upon the preceding element of digestion affecting the next phase of digestion. So, an example of that would be what happens in the stomach, how well you can make stomach acid and denature proteins and neutralize pathogens is going to directly influence how the liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas are able to continue the breakdown of food by making bile, enzymes, and bicarbonate and absorbing that food in the small intestine. If one of these aspects is compromised, if the digestive process itself is weak, you're going to ferment, you're not going to absorb. And if the pH is dysregulated, the enzymes that we're taking and the enzymes that we're making cannot be active in suboptimal pH related conditions. Therefore, the process of digestion is foundational to not only optimal gut health, to all aspects of health, because the food we eat becomes the nourishment that builds the tissue of our bodies. The second aspect, and yes, what you're seeing on the screen is the concentration of fecal matter in a GIF. But after the absorption phase, so the small intestine is the principal site of absorption, we have the elimination phase, but prior to that, we have the fermentation phase. the quantity of bacteria in the colon is dramatically outnumbering the quantity in the small intestine. And most of the fermentation of fibers, the constituents of food that we're no longer able to break down and extract food from, unlike proteins, carbs, and fats, become food for the microbes in the initial part of the colon. Fermentation happens here. So these things like short chain fatty acids, urolithins, secondary bile acids, all these signaling molecules that influence the gut immune system and also influence the gut epithelium typically happen here, as well as water reabsorption back into the body, providing the colon is hydrated enough to move stool through it. If someone is having a hard time passing stool, if it's painful, if they're having to push a lot, if the stool itself if I'm recalling the Bristol stool chart from nutrition school, but if the stool is small, dehydrated, more like ball-like rabbit pellets, that's a dehydrated colon. That's a mineral imbalance, and that person probably needs water. And that could be a simple fix because what they're doing is they're concentrating waste and they're not actually able to move it through. So the waste concentration is then preceded by waste removal. And someone should be doing this on a regular basis, as I mentioned before, somewhere between 12 and 16 hours every day on a regular basis. So the average person who says, "Oh, I go once in the morning," they may be regular, but they still may be suboptimal in terms of transit time because most animals and other creatures, if anyone's raised a child here, which I'm sure you have, babies don't poop once a day. They eat, they poop, they eat, they poop, one in, one out. And I don't think it's necessarily that required in terms of determining optimal, but making sure that bowel transit time and regular waste removal is on point is a very important thing because it is imperative to our overall health that we get the wastes that our body creates just running the normal metabolic processes of the physiology out. And a congested colon cannot allow a body to express overall health and vitality. And the final axis of this is the microbiome itself. And when I talk about the microbiome, I am talking about the coming together of the microbes that live in the mucosal layer, the trillions upon trillions of all the different strains and species that we still don't even know how many actually exist in terms of a diversity perspective exist within the small and more specifically large intestine, the multitude of immune cells, the vast majority of which live in the gut because they are the surveillance team of the body, making sure that what we're eating is actually food and healthy for us and not a potential threat or an issue. And then the cells of the small and large intestine, the epithelial lining, which are designed to be a physical barrier, but also to be an absorptive barrier, which makes them so susceptible to starting to break down. And if there is dysbiosis, that process of leaky gut can cause a lot of dysregulation within the body. You have influences of the gut in a multitude of different axes. The gut brain, the gut skin, lung, heart, gut immune axis are all going to be negatively affected if the gut starts to break down, which is almost always the case in everything from autoimmune presentations to chronic degenerative conditions to allergies to neurological challenges and dysregulations of the nervous system. The gut is implicated in all of these. And while all of those conditions are vastly more complex than simply fixing someone's digestive system, you can't heal the body if there is a breakdown in the coherence of the body and how it's able to operate and regulate physiology. So we have been asked questions, and I didn't know that you guys knew that Jeff was a stand-in for Tom Hanks in Castaway. It was actually him who built the fire, but he didn't want to take credit because he's very modest. So instead of building fire by himself, he listened to everyone's request and he built something different, everyone. He built protocols. And that's why I say this is a new thing for us today because we've actually never educated on specific protocols because protocols themselves, to me, are starting points. So they're not the solution, they're not the fix. They're wonderful places to begin if A, you don't know where to begin, or B, you want a starting point that you can allow for the evolution of your own modality of healthcare to intersect with what we think is a great starting point. I actually want to go through these two protocols today and explain why we've chosen the products, who they're for, why and when you would use them, and we can spend some time at the end maybe answering some questions on some finer details that come in people's minds. So we're going to go through the two options, the 31-day GI cleanse protocol and the 31-day complete GI protocol. So we're going to start with option one, the 31-day GI cleanse protocol. Of the two, this one is more aggressive, and I don't say aggressive in a negative context. I mean aggressive in its intent and the effect that it might have in the body, given what it's trying to accomplish. When I say the word cleansing and people hear that, sometimes people think cleansing and detox are synonymous. In this context, I don't believe so. I'm not using the word as a synonym. To me, cleansing is cleaning. And when we're referencing cleansing of the GI tract, we're trying to get things that are dirtying up the terrain out. So it could be bacterial, it could be viral, it could be parasitic, it could be fungal, it could be related to the inability to optimally break food down. And you're, as I said before, adding fertilizer to the field of the microbiome. So the combination of Cleanzyme and True Flora are really the stars of the show in terms of the cleaning crew. They are the specialists coming in, and we're layering the bookends of prebiotics and digestion with Enzalase Pro and Sunfiber Pro. So sorry, Sunfiber. There is no Sunfiber Pro. There is Sun Spectrum. As this protocol is designed, we went with the absolute basic dosages to give someone a starting point, but by no means do you need to stay at this level. But in my opinion, it's always better to start on the more gentle side and then work your way up to what someone can either tolerate based upon the desired effect that you want, or the quantity that you can rationalize being a maximal dose to where there is a point of no beneficial return by going more. So it's 2 capsules of Cleanzyme, 1 capsule twice a day, 1 capsule of True Flora Pro, again, once a day, inconsequential of when. When is more important for when the client can remember. 1 Enzalase Pro with the largest meal of the day, and working your way up to 1 scoop of sun fiber taken at any specific time of day when it's convenient for the client. The products have a very synergistic effect. I've never done a really deep dive on Cleanzyme, and I was doing some cool research. Cleanzyme is remarkable in terms of how the process comes together because it's not just magnesium oxide. First and foremost, this is not a magnesium supplement you take to relax yourself in the evening, unless you relaxing is being on a squatty potty with, a fountain geyser coming out of your back end if you take a high dose. Magnesium oxide, ozonated magnesium, there's a multitude of different magnesium chelates, which is the special aspect of what Cleanzyme does, because the whole goal of Cleanzyme is to cleanse, break up biofilms, draw water into the bowel, and oxidize the internal environment of the gut. And you may be thinking, why would I want to oxidize my gut? Oxidization is bad. No, it is not in the context of anti-microorganism strategies. Excessive reactive oxygen species and oxidation in the body is not a good thing, but the body uses reactive oxygen species on a regular basis as a way to stimulate and influence the immune system and to help crowd control within the gut. Bursts of reactive oxygen species can actually influence the immune system to take action on an infection. It can help to up or down regulate certain arms of the immune system. So, what this product is essentially doing is it's trying to create the optimal internal environment to destroy, cleanse, and remove. And as I said before, if the bowel is not moving in general health, that is a sign of a weakened body or a body lacking vitality. If you're trying to cleanse or detox the body, if the bowel's not moving, to me, it is a cardinal sin to try to detox someone without the ability of opening up all the channels of detoxification, the bowel being the most important because of the quantity of toxicity that the bowel can release. So, functionally speaking, the oxygenated ozonated magnesium can draw water into the bowel, so it can promote a laxative effect. And as you go higher in dose, someone will likely experience more watery stool, which could be a good thing if that's the goal. The ozone content, which is 3 oxygen molecules, has the ability to disassociate from the original molecule. So an extra oxygen can actually release itself and release a singlet oxygen radical, which has the ability to oxidize. And that can help to directly eradicate overgrowth of bacteria because there isn't a bacteria alive that can survive when there's high levels of ozone present. And the enzyme complexes are there for two things. Specifically, they seem to be quite effective for candida and fungal overgrowths, especially if it's invasive within the body, because they create this little thing called a hyphae. And this hyphae has a really rigid cell wall that is a combination of biofilm proteins and carbohydrates, polymers. And the immune cells are not able to get at these when they're well formed, which is why you need a biofilm buster. And the citric acid content of the cleanzyme keeps the pH levels low for the optimal release of the reactive oxygen species. Layer that in with sodium alginate and astrazyme, and you have a product that's going to get delivered to the optimal site of where we want it to work, which is in the small and large intestine. And taking it on a regular basis at a high dose will induce quite a potent cleansing effect within the gut. And taking it at a low dose on an ongoing basis can be something that would be wise for someone who has done a cleanse but wants to keep some of the benefits of supporting their gut as they rebound to see what's going to happen so overgrowths don't come back should there be a problem promoting that. So, functionality speaking, you're promoting regularity of the bowel evacuation with cleansing, as I mentioned. You're targeting overgrowths, especially of anaerobic bacteria in the small and large intestine, because pure anaerobes cannot live in an oxygen-rich environment. You're disrupting biofilms so you can maximize your immune system's natural ability to cleanse what might be living in your gut from a pathogen perspective. And it does help to address fungal overgrowth, which is really hard to treat in some people because you have the combination of enzyme modulation of biofilms and the pH modulation of the gut, because an alkaline environment is a fungus or a fungi's best friend. Or I don't know if that's a saying, but I just made it up. And you can ensure that the capsules are going to get delivered to where it is you want them to go, specifically in the small intestine for whatever might be happening there in the context of SIBO, and the large intestine for more complicated dysbiosis scenarios. This pairs really well with True Flora Pro, which is one of our newer products. And to me, True Flora is a hybrid. Even though it is a probiotic, it is what's called a bio-cleansing probiotic. And I've always used it as a really nice starting point to do some sort of antimicrobial, anti-organismic treatment on someone, because it's not an aggressive cleanser, but it has cleansing effects based upon the formulation and what the intention for the formulation is. So you have two strain designated lactobacilli that are very aggressive lactate producers. You have one spore that helps to populate and crowd out. And you have two yeast targeted enzymes that work in a similar way, not quite as robustly as Cleanzyme, but in a similar way to help target fungal cell walls and biofilms, because I think it's important to remember any time that there is a hydrated, watery surface with an organism, there is always going to be a biofilm because they build biofilms as a way to cloak themselves from the natural antimicrobial properties of the immune system. That's why various infections and infestations can be very quite recalcitrant. So the probiotics are designed to regulate the pH via the lactic acid generation. As I just mentioned, most scenarios involving Candida albicans and fungal overgrowth is because there's too much of an alkalosis present in the small and large intestine, which is a suitable environment for them. The other thing TrueFlora does is it stimulates the immune system because it generates stimulatory cytokines, pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are chemical messengers that the immune system uses to kind of direct specific activity of specific immune cells. And you might be thinking, well, why would I want pro-inflammatory? Inflammation is the first sign of healing. So acute inflammation is a good thing under conditions of infection or injury. What this probiotic can do for someone is if their immune system is a little weakened or there's been some sort of immune dysregulation, theoretically, the cytokines can help to upregulate certain aspects of natural killer cell activity, various branches of the immune system that help to neutralize bacterial pathogen, fungal pathogen infections. And in conjunction with the enzymes, the triangle, if you will, of breaking biofilms, upregulating the immune system, and bringing down the pH is going to help restore the terrain to a more optimal state to make it less hospitable for pathogens to live in. So this is a very powerful probiotic, which is why we call it a bio-cleansing probiotic. And from a functional standpoint, you're looking at the small intestine as a target of action. So you're having this direct and indirect anti-yeast activity. There's also some carryover for conditions like SIBO and other small intestinal related issues. And that's why it's a hybrid probiotic, in my point, as well as an antifungal support. So with a combination of Cleanzyme and TrueFlora Pro, you're getting some holistic coverage in two synergistic ways that have quite powerful anti-organism properties. As I said, those two are the stars of the show in terms of the cleansing effect. We are going to pair it with two other things to more so support processes behind the scenes, because when someone's cleansing, that is a stress on the body. Anytime the body is stressed, the body will activate the sympathetic nervous system. The reason it's called sympathetic is because it's sympathetic to the ever-changing needs of the physiology. And in some cases, things like digestive dysfunction can become problematic if the person's body is under unconscious stress. Additionally, if there's war being waged in the small intestine, you might need some extra enzymatic support because the pancreas might not be able to output things as optimally given its lower energetic state. So Enzalase Pro steps in from the perspective of it being a full spectrum enzyme complement focusing on supporting all macronutrient breakdown. However, it does have a high lipase content. It is the focus. I mean, if you look on the back of the label, lipase is in capital letters. So the deep delivery technology in conjunction with the high lipase is really going to support that aspect of digestive process that happens after food moves from the stomach into the small intestine, past the gallbladder, past the pancreas, or the medium, I call it the medium-sized molecule digestion phase happens, where the process just before absorption is at its greatest level of activity. So with supporting the cleansing process, you still want to make sure that you're adding all the nutrition into your system and you're breaking it down optimally. And I like using Enzalase Pro because of its high lipase content, specifically for people who have known troubles digesting fatty foods or if they have chronic liver issues, because even though the gallbladder is what concentrates and releases the bile, the liver is actually what makes the bile. And bile not only is important for digestion, but bile acts as a solvent, a cleaner, if you will, for the small intestine. And secondary bile acids in the large intestine are signaling molecules to regulate the microbiome. So if you have clients who have liver and gallbladder issues, this is the digestive enzyme to go for just because of its higher lipase support in conjunction with its sodium alginate technology, which allows it to get to the main site of action, which, as I said, is the critical point of the digestion and absorption interface. Because the best food in the world is actually not all that beneficial to us if we can't absorb it properly. The last thing we use here is sun fiber. And this is actually the topic of our most recent recorded podcast. So look for that coming out soon. And we've done a very deep dive on sun fiber in the latter half of 2025. So I'll just touch on the finer points here. So extracted purified fiber from partially hydrolyzed guar gum, which is a bean pod product. And the focus of sun fiber is really its magic in its ability to help promote a healthy gut via the production of butyrate by bacterial cross feeding. So, butyrate is a short chain fatty acid, of which there are three: lactate, propionate, and butyrate. And butyrate seems to be the preferred fuel source for the epithelial cells of the small intestine and more specifically the colon. Butyrate is hard to make, and in order to make butyrate, you have to have good diversity of bacteria within your microbiome because they all pitch in like a good series of neighbors to help keep the neighborhood clean and safe for all inhabitants. Sun fiber has a large molecular weight, which means it's hard to break down by any single microbe. So it doesn't promote feeding certain pathogens like other prebiotics, say inulin does. But it instead requires these bacterial teams to team up in order to produce this butyrate. So not only does it foster the growth of the healthy bacteria within the gut, it also creates an optimal environment because locally butyrate helps to keep the epithelial cells functioning healthfully and strong, but peripherally, some of the research on butyrate shows it has the ability to improve everything from satiety regulation in the brain to systemic mitochondrial function. So it really is quite a cool product that would blow most people's minds if they knew just how far-reaching this humble little fiber product really is. And what's cool about this product specifically is it's super stealthy. What I mean by stealthy, it doesn't have any taste. It's odorless. It mixes easily in all liquids, hot and cold. So, taken as a daily way to promote microbial diversity is a great strategy, especially if someone can't get the variety of optimal fibers they may want and need from a healthy diet, because not everyone is there in terms of their dietary journey, knowing how to eat healthfully more than eating for taste, desire, or convenience. So, this is the first protocol. And if there's three major things you want to take away, it's what this protocol does. It ensures digestion and microbial health are supported under the conditions of intestinal cleansing, because, as I did mention, it is a stressful situation to the body. Number two, it offers the potential for some direct antibacterial, antifungal action within the microbiome. As I said, it's not specifically targeted for anything, but based upon the functionalities of the products, you know what it is you're likely going to be addressing, providing you have done some assessment, knowing what your client may be suffering with. Third thing is it promotes enhanced evacuation of the bowels, and thus it makes sure that you get the die-off reaction waste out of the body. If anyone's ever experienced a Herxheimer's reaction, you would know that you wouldn't wish that upon your enemy sometimes. And if you are going to cleanse, you do want to make sure that bowel regularity is as speedy as that person's physiology can allow for. And the special note here is a lot of people want to feel things when they take products. They want to know the product is working. If you manipulate the dosage of this product, there is no questions someone will feel if this product is working. And that, in some cases, for someone who might be a skeptic or a little bit recalcitrant to trying such things, will make a believer out of them if just enough that they change their bowel habits and they have a good cleansing effect. The aftermath of cleansing is always feeling lighter in a multitude of ways. The gut feels trimmer and healthier. There may be less bloating. People feel more energetic, less water retention. They sleep better. Their overall energy level and mood and vitality have improved. And that's what's so powerful about cleansing the GI system. And who's this for? Well, it's really for anyone who wants to do some deeper cleaning of the digestive system, specifically attacking one of the conditions that people seem to suffer with nowadays, dysbiosis, SIBO, candida, what have you. So it's a great starting point for that, but also parasites, because most people who travel internationally, they come home with souvenirs for their families, and they may come home with souvenirs for themselves, just unknowingly so. And what I think the real thing here is, if someone has been dealing with a digestive issue for years, if not a decade plus, this might be something they may want to do more than once. You know, a 31-day cleanse might not be enough to overcome 5 to 10 years of digestive distress. So someone who has had an internally disrupted microbiome for quite some time, and they have some degree of recovery, then they relapse and some degree of recovery, you may want to cycle through this a couple times just to make sure that you've given this person um, proper, thorough opportunity to cleanse to the degree of their body's ability to allow for this to happen. What I mean by that is you might want to start with a low dose at first and see how the person responds. Then you might want to slowly start bringing up the dose over time, because if the person's feeling better and more energetic, with body having more energy, they can tolerate more stress during the process of cleansing. So this is something we can talk about a little bit after if people want to add additional context. So now that we've done option one, let's look at option two, the 31-day complete GI protocol. This is a far more standard. If anything, this is the foundation of what started Master Supplements back in 2003, which really was enzymes, probiotics, and prebiotics. So this is a harken back to uh, Randy Perupkin, our great fearless leader who's no longer with us, and his whole idea of creating this triangle of stability and support for the gut through the use of strategic probiotics, digestive enzymes that ensure that they get through, and the probiotics ensure that they get through the harsh environments of where they need to travel through, and prebiotics to promote the growth of hard to grow microbes. Again, this is a starting point. It's a single capsule of Theralac Pro. It's a single capsule of Digeszyme with the largest meal of the day. And I would say starting with a half scoop, working your way up to a scoop of sun fiber. This is a very gentle thing that is actually not necessarily even a protocol to address anything, This is what I would call a good insurance policy if you live in the Western world and you're subjected to Western levels of stress and the quality of food that we're unfortunately given nowadays, especially if you eat out on a regular basis. Digestzyme Plus, and Enzalase are all of our digestive enzymes, and there are subtle differences. As I mentioned, Enzalase is where I would go for people who have had gallbladderectomies, liver issues, problems with digesting high-fat meals. Digestion Plus has a larger profile of enzymes, 23 in fact. So not only is it a little bit more focused on the carbohydrate and protein digestion side of things, it has multi-stage pH-dependent proteases that are really cool because there's different parts of protein digestion that happen within the stomach and the three phases of the small intestine prior to absorption. There's also a multitude of different enzymes that help in terms of fiber breakdown, and some people just don't tolerate high quantities of fibers. You know, if they can have chickpea pasta and look like they're 6 months pregnant an hour later, this might be something that's very beneficial. And the astrazyme present in this product is going to be that cofactor to maximally activate the enzymes so that they can do the most efficient job. Because at the end of the day, an enzyme is a catalyst to break something down. So for every enzyme you take, you want that enzyme to do the maximal amount of work possible. To me, digestyme is ideal for supporting meals that are larger in nature or protein-rich meals. If someone's trying more of a paleo carnivore style diet, but they haven't adjusted or adapted to it yet, this might be a good starting point. For those who are active and simply need more food volume, recreational athletes, pro athletes, youth athletes, which is an important thing. Our Digestion Plus is actually Inform Sport certified for any athletes who are going the high school college route. It's important to educate them on the quality and the accreditations that those products have to ensure that there's no issues with and substance testing. And there's a ever debate going on of when do you take a digestive enzyme? I think the most fundamental answer is with a meal. If it goes in, it's important. Logically, to me, it makes most sense to do it in the middle or the end of the meal because the capsule will need some time to dissolve. So when those contents of the dissolved capsule start to mix with the food and it churns with all the food of your stomach, you want maximal mixture to expose the enzymes to the greatest amount of surface area so they can do their work. This pairs very well with Theralac Pro because if there's one probiotic to take just to maintain the overall health and well-being of your digestive system, this would be it. We also did quite a deep dive on Theralac in the latter half of 2025. But just to refresh everyone, you have four strain-designated lactobacilli, two strain-designated bifidobacteria. So you have the small and large intestines covered off quite well. You have powerful immune modulating properties. So when I use the word modulating, what I mean is you have the ability to secrete both pro and anti-inflammatory cytokines, which has the ability to influence the different branches of the immune system, the innate, the adaptive immune system, the Th1, the Th2 responses, which might be synergistic for helping to keep someone in good health because your immune system should be able to respond to a threat appropriately and raise the red flag, so to speak, and simulate the inflammatory response. But once you've neutralized the threat, you want things to go back to baseline and clear up. And that happens so many times a day in our bodies that we have no idea. We only are aware of it when it's actually a severe response. So you're helping to promote colonization in the small and the large intestine. And this can be a way of with modulating the immune system, a soft way of helping to either address current levels of dysbiosis or to prevent the ability for dysbiosis to develop because the colonization potential of these strains is very high. And the deep delivery technology of the sodium alginate ensures that you are getting the probiotics through the harsh conditions of the stomach into where you want them to actually inoculate. So it's a gentle way to help address idiopathic gut issues. Idiopathic is a way of saying something of unknown origin for people, but it's also just a way to maintain optimal gut health if you're currently experiencing that. And as we've said, you know, this is a 31-day cleanse or not cleanse, but protocol rather, where you're taking one capsule a day for 31 days. You can do three capsules a week ongoingly, two capsules a week ongoingly, so you're just maintaining without having to be so dependent upon taking a pill every day to see what your gut can do naturally. And this is the number one consumer reviewed, validated product we have. The amount of five-star reviews and stories we have of people having miraculous shifts in their digestive health in a very short period of time just from this product alone is remarkable. And I really want to do a good job of highlighting that this year because sometimes when people are looking for anything and everything, they're so desperate that little win gives them just enough staying power to see something through and hopefully get to the bottom of what they're dealing with. That's the power that Theralac Pro has. And we're adding sun fiber in, to which I won't go over the redundancies, but just like for the other cleanse protocol, with a complete GI protocol, the same premise is understood. We're supplementing a prebiotic to help support the growth of healthy microbes to work synergistically with improved digestion, improved regulation of the microbes through probiotic supplementation to create that triangle of support. So, using these in conjunction gives us the idea of what this protocol does. And this is kind of the every person's protocol. It appeals to everyone who has a gut issue or someone who has had gut issues in the past and wants to maintain hard work that they've put in to reestablish some degree of improved health. And it does that because it supports the common points of breakdown, which is what often catalyzes gut issues. As I said, it starts with digestive dysfunction, which then promotes the overgrowth of dysbiosis. So, by supporting your digestive system and the organs of digestion with the enzyme, helping to maintain an improved state or to neutralize dysbiotic state to some degree with the Theralac Pro and the sun fiber, you're giving someone that support to not allow things to progress in a way that they don't want them to go. And for clients who are the canaries in the coal mine, I always bring this up because I think it's important. It's happened to me clinically. Some people just don't have the physiologic stress tolerance to do an aggressive cleanse. This is a great starting point. Some people are very, very hesitant or worried about something bad happening, and they don't need logic. They need to know that something is not going to affect them negatively from an experiential perspective. And this is where I would start those canary in the coal mine people physiologically or those psychologically, emotionally timid, trepidatious clients, because you don't want to scare them away and freak them out by making them feel something that they're not psychologically and physiologically ready to deal with. So that's who this is for. It's for the every person who feels like they could benefit from the direct gut support. People who may have some occasional digestive issues pop up when they don't sleep enough, when they're working too much, when they get off of their regular schedule when it comes to diet, exercise, and lifestyle maintenance. And those who have had occasional bowel related issues that come and go, and maybe they want to do a little bit of direct targeted action to see if they can improve it. To me, this is the every person's protocol, and it's a great starting point of maintaining health. Notice how I didn't say addressing dysfunction, of maintaining health. And I just want to round out with some additional protocol notes. So these are basic instructions, guys. They're not targeted and not specific instructions. They are a starting point, and if you want to layer in your own twist, modify things, bring something else in from our product line, or modify a dosage based upon your expertise, your belief, the knowledge or information that you hold, or what your client may require, you can downregulate dosages if you feel that would be a wise decision for your client. Can also be layered in with other products of the catalog, or you can switch something out should you maybe muscle test someone or bioenergetically test someone and realize, oh, True Flora might be a little aggressive for them, but maybe I'll give them Theralac instead, or maybe I'll give them True Bifido and then I'll try True Flora down the line. There really is no absolutes or no hard lines of division when it comes to doing things. And the durations can also be modified. And as I mentioned before, protocols can be repeated. And in many cases, they probably should be because if anyone's really helped eradicate candida overgrowth in someone, sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months of pulsing a protocol, giving the body some respite and recovery time, then going again and modulating certain products, adding things in, taking things away. So I want you all to feel like you have the bandwidth of opportunity and creativity to make this all your own. And to coincide with this, we are doing a 20% off Cleanzyme and True Flora Pro for the entire month. And I do not believe there are any limitations on quantity ordered. You can also pass the online code along to your client should you do virtual client practice or telemedicine. And that will give them the ability to order personally on the website, get the discount, and it comes into your account anyways. So we will take some time at the end for some questions, but just to reiterate everything, I hope that was helpful and useful for you guys. To me, that was a lot of fun going through protocols. We have not done that before. And hint, hint, it will not be the last time this year we go through some protocols. So do be mindful of the promotions that we're emailing out, the information that we're sending out to you guys. And if you want more information, always look us up on social media. We're really putting some great content out on our podcast, the Following Your Gut podcast. So we would appreciate you sharing that and your support with listening. And if you have any great guests or clients, we're always open to suggestions because we love to connect with great people. And please do follow us on social media, like, subscribe, share, all the good things nowadays because the world really is virtual. And I can't believe how quickly information is growing in the world of health. And we do want to be one of those voices that honors the time-honored tradition of trying to develop high quality levels of information and dare I say expertise, because there are a lot of things that are distractions trying to take your attention. I do appreciate all of you who come to these and listen into these because it takes a lot of time and research to put them together, and we hope that we're doing a great job. So we can take some time for questions here. If anyone has any questions or comments, now is your time to please pop them into the chat. I will stop my screen share and we can take some time to dig into stuff. Oh, there's some stuff in the chat. All right, Larry, you mentioned titrating up on sun fiber. Where would you be suggesting starting at, and what is the maximum dose of sun fiber? So that's a great question, Larry. The starting dose, I always think for the average person is a half scoop. Because in some cases, even though sun fiber is fermentable, but it's gentle at the same time, some people may not react positively, especially if they have not been used to either higher fiber diets or diets devoid of fiber diversity. So it may take some time for the microbiome to start to adapt to that. I actually spoke to Derek, who is the PhD RD from Tayo Research, who is actually Sunfiber is his baby. He said there is no logical reason why one would go beyond a scoop a day. So I think that that would be the starting point, half a scoop a day, titrating up to a scoop a day, because with fiber, more is not better. You know, it might be, oh, let's do more butyrate. Let's make a healthier microbiome. In some cases, you're just going to start to ferment too much, and it probably could get uncomfortable for people. Um, so RJ Paul said, can you please put up the slide with option one? Are you asking for the protocol with all the four different products? Just want to make sure I put that up correctly. I'll move on to the next question while I'm waiting for your response there. Suggestions with modifications with no gallbladder for decades, problem with constipation. So in that case, if you had no gallbladder, obviously there's likely some dysbiosis that's going to be present in the entirety of the system, and there's likely going to be some local issues in the small intestine. I would say that starting the GI cleanse at a lower dose, maybe doing one TrueFlora Pro every other day to assess how you tolerate that, because that would be the site where there would maybe be a negative reaction if the person's system were sensitive. You do want to go higher on the cleanzyme to make sure that you're moving your bowels on a regular basis before you do anything. So I would say bring your dose of cleanzyme up to the suggested quantity. If that still doesn't get you to having more regular, frequent watery bowel movements, bring your capsule up by one capsule per day until you get that to that point where you are actually having watery stool and you're releasing on a regular basis. Then go back to the optimal quantity of capsules in the base protocol and see how that goes. So that would be my suggestion there, just because if you're constipated, you have to get the bowels moving before you cleanse anything. And once you've gotten that, there will likely be a little bit of discomfort because there will be some cleansing along with moving of the bowels. Then you can benefit from using the other products in conjunction with a system that's already moving. I hope that was helpful. How can we buy these products? So, Colleen, if you are yourself a practitioner and you have an account, you just call up your rep. If you are an individual who is learning about this stuff for her own well-being, you can call our customer service representatives directly at the company. It would either be Bill or Blake, and they can walk you through the process of how to order. Or if you have a practitioner yourself that you're working with, they can get an account registered. They can give you a product code to order. And then this way you can order personally, but it goes through their account.